The room was packed. Rows of proud families filled the auditorium, smiling as they waited for the graduation ceremony to begin. I sat alone. 2 empty seats beside me seemed to scream louder than the crowd around me. My name is Ethan Walker, and at 28 years old, I had finally accomplished something I was proud of. After years of military service, injuries, and setbacks, I had been selected for a prestigious international security leadership program. It wasn't a small achievement. But according to my father, it was worthless. 3 days earlier, I had invited him to the ceremony. His response still echoed in my head. "You're getting a certificate, Ethan. Not saving the world." Then he laughed. "In this family, your brother is the success story." My younger brother, Ryan, was a wealthy tech entrepreneur. My father worshipped him. I was the disappointment. The son who spent years overseas doing dangerous work nobody understood. The son who rarely talked about what happened in Afghanistan. The son who came home with scars. The son who never seemed good enough. I was preparing myself to sit through the ceremony alone when the auditorium doors suddenly opened. My father walked in. Behind him came Ryan. For a brief moment, hope filled my chest. Maybe they had changed their minds. Maybe they came to support me after all. Then my father spotted me. He walked down the aisle with a smirk. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced loudly enough for nearby rows to hear, "there's our family adventurer." Several people looked over. My face burned. Dad continued, "Ryan builds companies worth millions." He patted my shoulder. "And Ethan collects certificates." A few uncomfortable laughs followed. I wanted the floor to swallow me. Ryan didn't say anything. He never did. He simply stood there and allowed it. Dad shook his head dramatically. "Honestly, son, when are you going to stop pretending you're some kind of hero?" The words hit harder than he knew. Because years ago, I had actually done something heroic. Something nobody knew about. Something buried beneath government paperwork and classified reports. I opened my mouth to respond. But before I could, a voice interrupted. "Excuse me." Everyone turned. A tall man stood near the aisle. Broad shoulders. Close-cropped hair. The posture of someone who had spent a lifetime in uniform. He wore civilian clothes, but there was no mistaking him. Military. The stranger stared at me. Then his eyes widened. His face turned pale. He stepped closer. Slowly. Carefully. As if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then he leaned toward another veteran beside him and whispered, "The White Devil of Kabul." My blood froze. "No, not here. Not now." The veteran looked shocked. "You're kidding." The first man shook his head. "No, that's him." Suddenly both men stood at attention. The room fell silent. My father laughed awkwardly. "What is this?" The taller veteran ignored him. Instead, he extended his hand toward me. "My name is Jake Morrison. Former Navy SEAL." I shook it. His grip was firm. His eyes carried memories. Dangerous memories. "I never thought I'd see you again." The audience watched in confusion. Dad crossed his arms. "You know my son." Jake stared at him. Then he answered quietly, "Sir, your son saved 37 lives." The auditorium went silent. Dad blinked. "What?" Jake looked around the room. I was there. My stomach tightened. I knew where this was going. And I hated it. 7 years earlier, Kabul had been collapsing into chaos. A joint evacuation mission had gone horribly wrong. A convoy carrying civilians and military personnel had become trapped. Communication failed. Support never arrived. Everything was falling apart. Jake continued speaking. We were surrounded. His voice trembled. People were dying. The audience listened carefully. And then Ethan showed up. I shook my head. Jake. But he continued. He drove directly into the danger zone. Gasps spread through the room. He refused to leave people behind. Jake looked at me. I watched him carry wounded strangers through gunfire. The memories returned. Smoke. Fear. Blood. Screaming. People begging for help. Jake's voice cracked. My younger brother was among those civilians. He swallowed hard. Ethan saved him. The room became completely silent. Dad stared at me, speechless. For the first time in my life, he didn't have a joke. Jake reached into his jacket. He removed an old photograph. A faded picture. The image showed exhausted survivors standing beside a damaged vehicle. And there I was, covered in dust, barely conscious, holding a little girl in my arms. Jake handed the photo to my father. He never told anyone because he didn't want attention. Dad's hands trembled. I looked away. The ceremony suddenly felt very small. But the surprises weren't over. Because a woman near the front row had started crying. I noticed her immediately. Dark hair, green eyes, elegant blue dress. She looked familiar. Very familiar. Then realization hit me. Emily. My heart stopped. Emily Carter. The woman I had loved. The woman I lost. The woman I hadn't seen in 6 years. She stood slowly. Tears filled her eyes. Ethan. I could barely breathe. After Afghanistan, I had pushed everyone away. Including her. Especially her. I believed I was protecting her from the darkness I carried home. Instead, I broke her heart. Now she stood only a few feet away. Looking exactly like the memory that haunted me every night. The ceremony became irrelevant. The audience disappeared. All I saw was Emily. You disappeared, she whispered. I lowered my eyes. I know. No calls. I'm sorry. No explanations. I nodded. I know. Tears rolled down her cheeks. You broke me. The truth hurt because it was deserved. Then came another twist. Emily smiled sadly. I spent years hating you. My chest tightened. But I never stopped loving you. The words hit harder than any battlefield memory. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Jake quietly moved away, giving us space. The audience remained completely captivated. Emily took a step closer. Why did you leave? I finally answered honestly. Because I wasn't the same man anymore. She shook her head. That should have been my choice. I had no response. Because she was right. For years, I convinced myself leaving was noble. In reality, it was fear. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of being loved. Fear of being seen. Then something unexpected happened. My father stood. His eyes were red. I had never seen him cry. Not once. Not when Grandpa died. Not when Mom passed away. Never. Yet now tears filled his eyes. Ethan. I looked at him. His voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? I laughed bitterly. Would you have believed me? That question struck him like a punch. Because we both knew the answer. Probably not. For years he had already decided who I was. Ryan was the golden child. I was the failure. Facts never mattered. Only assumptions. Dad lowered his head, and for the first time in my entire life, he apologized. I'm sorry. The words were small, but they carried decades of weight. I was wrong. The room remained silent. My father wiped his eyes. I spent years judging you. He looked directly at me. And I never bothered to understand you. Something inside me softened. Not completely. Some wounds take longer. But it was a start. Then Ryan stepped forward. To everyone's surprise, he looked ashamed. I owe you an apology too. I frowned. Ryan sighed. You know why Dad always compared us? I shrugged. Because you were successful. Ryan shook his head. No. His voice was quiet. Because he was afraid. Afraid of what? Ryan looked at me. Afraid you'd get killed. I blinked. What? Ryan nodded. Every time you deployed, he'd stay awake all night. Dad looked away. Embarrassed. Ryan continued. He couldn't handle the fear. The revelation stunned me. For years I thought Dad didn't care. Maybe caring was exactly the problem. Maybe he buried it beneath criticism. Not because he hated me. Because he didn't know how to express love. It didn't excuse everything, but it explained a lot. The ceremony finally began, yet nobody paid much attention. The real story had already unfolded. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage. The audience erupted into applause. Not because of awards. Not because of achievements. But because they had witnessed something rarer. A family beginning to heal. When I stepped off the stage, Emily was waiting. She smiled. You still owe me 6 years. I laughed. That's a lot of catching up. She squeezed my hand. I have time. For the first time in years, hope returned. Not the kind found in medals. Or certificates. Or recognition. The kind found in second chances. As people began leaving, Jake approached one last time. He extended his hand. The White Devil of Kabul. I groaned. I always hated that nickname. Jake laughed. Too bad. It's legendary. I shook my head. Then he grew serious. You know something? What? The bravest thing you did today wasn't Kabul. I raised an eyebrow. Jake smiled. It was staying. I understood exactly what he meant. Sometimes running into danger is easier than facing the people who hurt you. Sometimes survival is easier than forgiveness. And sometimes the hardest battle isn't fought overseas. It's fought at home. That afternoon I walked out of the auditorium beside Emily. My father followed. Then Ryan. For the first time in many years, we walked together. Not as perfect people. Not as a perfect family. But as people willing to start over. And sometimes, that's enough.